Hi, we're here with Heidi Wills, who's running for Seattle City Council, District 6. Would you like to go ahead with your 2-minute introduction?
Sure. Thank you. I'm Heidi Wills, and I'm running for the City Council as a working mom, a small business owner, a nonprofit director specialized in youth development because I care about our community very much, and the people in our community, and I'm concerned about Seattle on the trajectory of a number of issues facing us, from affordable housing to transportation to more effectively addressing homelessness. I have the skills and background, I believe, to hit the ground running when I get there because I've been a Seattle City Council member. And prior to that, I worked for the county for 6 years on growth management, transportation, and affordable housing, and also convening a tri-county effort for salmon restoration. And prior to that, I was a fundraising director for the King County Party. And I've also been drawn to public service because I care a lot about people and the planet. I'm a student body president at the University of Washington, where I had the opportunity to help bring the UPass program to fruition and also start the recycling program at the University of Washington. And when I was on the City Council, I helped champion environmental issues and climate protection, helping us get a large wind contract for the first time, to divest from coal power at the Centralia coal plant, and I helped start the Green Power program, where we are including solar installations in public buildings throughout the city. I helped found an organization that I was the executive director for called the First Tee of Greater Seattle, working with youth, primarily in underserved communities in Seattle, for 13 years, reaching kids outside of school, but also partnering with the schools to reach over 100,000 kids each year through school relationships. So I think bringing this breadth of experience to the table, I think, would be a benefit to our community.
Great, thank you. We left off on Laura. Would you like to start with question 1? You may flip that over, and these are 2 minutes.
Okay.
If elected, what policies will you support to address the need for affordable housing and homeless services?
Okay, I think that today's paper was a really great start, right? Because we see that $15 million is being dedicated to supportive permanent housing in our community for another 300 people to get the services they need, which I think is tremendously exciting. We need to see more of it. I think on affordable housing, so homelessness and affordable housing, I think I'm going to decouple those if I can, even though I only have 2 minutes. To say on homelessness, I think that we definitely need more housing, but I think we also need a coordinated approach. It's very fragmented in our community, and it's hard for case managers to even navigate the system. So I think the coordinated approach that's being discussed now between the city and the county will be a really good thing. Then with regard to affordable housing, we need it desperately throughout our community, and some ideas I think for us to gain more affordable housing are, I'm very excited to see what's happening with ADUs, that legislation going through the city. I think that's a gentle way to incorporate more housing in our communities and allows current homeowners to age in place. I think that it's also exciting to think about the idea of lidding I-5 and using that for probably market rate housing to then use those proceeds to buy land where it would be less expensive to create more affordable housing. I'm excited that the state has expanded their housing trust fund to $175 million, which will increase the opportunity for even small providers to get grants up to $3 million to provide more affordable housing in our community. And I think we really need to look at neighborhood planning and zoning and work with neighborhoods on where we can incorporate more housing throughout the city.
Thank you.
Seattle has the most regressive tax code in the state, with the most regressive tax code in the country. Given the repeal of the head tax and the ongoing litigation over the city's income tax, how would you raise more progressive revenue to help fund the city services?
So I think that there's a few ideas currently being kicked around, and one is with the REIT tax. Right now, that's a baseline tax of 1.82% when there's a home sale. Rather than that being a flat fee, we could make that a progressive tax so that more expensive homes pay more in REIT taxes. I think that it's also an intriguing idea to have $1 service fees added to Lyft and Uber rides into downtown. New York City is already doing this, so there's a precedent for it. And directing those funds to affordable housing and to transportation improvements, I think, is an exciting idea. And then, of course, we need to continue to work with our state, because it is so regressive, on the idea of income tax. I think that we've been too hesitant to really push that. And I think that now really is the time when you see homelessness the way we do now. It's so visible. It's really apparent that we need to have a more progressive tax structure. And we know that 1 in 4 people in our community are living below the poverty level, right? So people are making choices between buying food or taking their child to the doctor or paying their rent. We need to have a more progressive tax structure, and we really need to lean hard on the state legislature for that.
Thank you.
Given the city's reset of the New Seattle levy, the upcoming expiration of the city's bus funding tax, and the planning for light rail through much of the district, what would be your priorities in deciding how the city spends its transportation funds?
I think that if I were to rank modes of importance on transportation, I would say wheelchairs first, right? We really need to have a city that is accessible to everyone. Then I would say we need to think in terms of walkability and pedestrian safety, and we still have 1/4 of our city that doesn't even have sidewalks. I then prioritize bicycles. I think many more people would be willing to ride bicycles if they felt safe and had dedicated lanes for bicycles in our community. Then I would prioritize transit. I also think that if we had more transit available throughout the city, a lot more people would take it. And then I would prioritize driving. Right now we know that 20% of the rides coming into downtown are single occupancy vehicles, and yet 80% of the land space is dedicated to cars. So I think that that's why ideas like congestion pricing done in a progressive way, like a sliding scale, is a way that we can look for new revenue that can go towards transportation improvements. And another idea is with electric scooters, which helps us get to that last mile to and from major transit modes. I think electric scooters are a way where we could charge fees to those scooter companies and dedicate those funds to some of these priorities as well, especially to completing the bike master plan.
Great, thank you. And Ben.
How will you continue the process of reforming the Seattle Police Department beyond the expiration of the consent decree?
Again, that's a high topic in today's paper as well. And I think that we're learning that some things are going well, right? The use of force has been on the decrease, which is good, but we've also been learning that it's more likely that the police will use a firearm with a person of color and be more hands-on with a person who's not. So I think that just knowing some of these statistics, that it's important that we have civilian oversight. That's an ongoing thing that we'll continue to need even after the consent decree expires. I think at the same time, there are a number of officers who are doing a good job, and I think that needs to be acknowledged as well. I think the fact that we do have a low number of police coming into the system, we have 130 vacancies within the police department, which strains the current police force that we do have, and we don't want them feeling strained while they're on the job. So I think that we definitely need to figure out how we're going to attract people that reflect the community they're serving. And having worked in South Seattle for 13 years, I'd say that that's a good career opportunity for some of the children that I worked with. That being a police officer and working with the community in a way that builds trust can go a long way to improving relations.
Thank you.
Thank you. And now we're opening up to questions. These responses are 1 minute apiece. Brittany and Sarah, then Clayton.
I was really happy to hear you expressing support for more bike lanes. But as you know, of course, there's a lot of tension in some areas between different groups of the population regarding bike lanes and where and how they should be implemented. How would you manage that?
You know, that's a very good point, right? When you look at polls, right, there's not always a strong support for bicycle lanes, and yet when you look at how crowded our city is, right, there's just only so much road space. And when people are driving and they're complaining, like, look at all this traffic, it's like, yeah, you're traffic, you're part of that. So I think that we need to acknowledge that we are a changing city, and that if we really want to be carbon neutral by the year 2050, which is the city's goals, then we're really going to need to make some big improvements and modality and offering a whole range of transportation choices to people. I served on the board for Transportation Choices Coalition, and I think that if we talk in terms of choice, right, and offering ways that people can get around our community easily, reliably, affordably. Not everyone can afford to drive a car. Not everyone wants to. So we need to provide alternative forms of transportation.
Okay. Thank you. Sarah,
what are your plans to further address climate change, and what would you do to reach those carbon neutral goals?
Okay, transportation is the biggest way that the city of Seattle can, because our electricity is already carbon neutral. But I think there's ways that we can electrify our city that would be really exciting. A lot of it has to do with commercial buildings too, and if they would choose to go down at the beginning a more expensive route, but in the long run a more responsible route, I think that would yield dividends. I think that we have a real big opportunity with sound transit in the sense that Metro's made a wonderful goal of being carbon neutral in their buses by 2040. And they're just keeping that on an ongoing replacement schedule, but Sound Transit hasn't made that same commitment. And they're getting ready to buy buses. So I think if we could lean on Sound Transit's board to make the same kind of commitment, I think we'd see some exciting things happening for our community and our air quality and our carbon footprint.
thank you. Clayton?
What specific ideas regarding police retraining and their relationships with minorities in the city, specifically young black males, how we would humanize their treatment of that population?
Yeah, you know, I think that, again, we need to, like you said, humanize that, and creating relationships is the best way to do that. When I was working at a nonprofit that served youth, we would bring in guest speakers to talk with our kids. We had a mentorship program, a one-on-one mentorship program, but in a group setting. And we would have a police officer come in. And at first, the kids would be pretty, you know, concerned. They maybe haven't interfaced with a police officer before, or the things they've heard about police brutality were of real concern. But I think once, like you said, they humanized this person in a uniform and asked questions like, why did you want to become a cop? What's it like being a cop? You know, the kinds of questions that a child would have. It changed, right, the dynamic. And I think that we need to do more of that, humanizing our police force.
Okay, thank you. Next we have Alice.
What are your thoughts on single-family zoning and maybe sort of rethinking the way we approach that?
Yes. So I think that this is an issue that we're seeing a lot of polarization in our community around it. And I'm going door to door through the campaign, talking to a lot of people. And one woman I spoke with, she had a 5-year-old son. She's single mom. She's moved 5 times in the last 5 years. She's a nurse at the 45th Street Clinic. And she said just trying to find a 2-bedroom was really difficult, close to where she works. But she said, come with me, let me show you what's in the backyard. And she showed me a cottage where her landlady lived. And it was a really nice situation for her. When I went across the street and met the people that live across the street from them, their top priority was they were upset about ADUs. And when I explained to them, do you know who lives across the street from you? They had no idea. So I think once, again, getting back to humanizing this and having conversations in our community, that we're talking about our nurses and our firefighters and our teachers having an opportunity to live close to where they work in their schools. And my time is up.
Thank you. Ben.
So 2 really quick questions, then a longer one. Can you tell me how many homeless people are living in King County right now?
Well, with the count that we had on January 25th, we found that we have 11,199, and 53% of those people were in shelter, but 47% weren't. And that meant they were in cars, or they're in tents, or they're sleeping in doorways. So we'll know more when the report comes out by the end of the month of who these people are. But I think that we have the 3rd highest homeless population in the country. And that's deeply concerning. And I think that's why this question that you ask about housing is so important. It's really unaffordable for a lot of people to remain in our community, or to find an affordable place to live in our communities. And SSI is only $750 per month. So we're seeing the repercussions of that in the homeless count. And I think we need to do more for permanent supportive housing. My time is up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And wraparound services.
Summer.
Oh, I wanted to talk to you about, you talked about people remaining in their homes, and not just homes, but apartments. I was the beneficiary of San Francisco, New York, living under rent control, rent stabilization. And while it doesn't do anything for the affordability of the entry point, it really does a lot for people to be able to know what their increases are every year and be able to stay in their apartments when they don't own. And so I wanted to speak to you and ask you your question, your philosophy, and whether or not you'd support rent stabilization and rent control in Seattle.
Well, it's a hypothetical question because we don't have it from the state of Washington, the ability to do that. So I've been focusing my thoughts and ideas around how do we help renters in our community. And I think that the rent stabilization fund is one way to do that, and we need to increase that. We know that evictions, that the average amount owed is $1,200, right? So that is like, if we could help people not be evicted from their homes with $1,200, which is pretty nominal when you consider how much it costs to help get someone housed again, that's really where we need to be preventing homelessness. And we also know that a lot of women and children are being displaced by this. So we need to go down to the legislature and have these kinds of conversations so that they'd be willing to make those kinds of changes. If they did it in the state of Oregon, I think that might be more persuasive because it's showing that it's been done in other communities.
Great, thank you. And final question, Sarah?
Are you supportive of impact fees, and if so, how would you work to get them passed?
I cannot believe that Seattle didn't do this long ago. I think we would not have a lot of the problems that we have now because we are looking to the general fund to fund all these things that we've just been talking about in terms of even just infrastructure improvements for transportation. And the general fund is also being utilized for housing and human services and so many other basic needs in our community. So if other cities, this is getting back to what you were saying, Summer, right? Like if it's been proven to work in other areas, why aren't we incorporating it here? It's for new development, so Seattle kind of missed the boat on that a bit, but there is some new development coming, and I think now is a really good time to have that conversation, because we need it for infrastructure and improvements in particular, but we can also use it for schools and for parks.
Great, thank you. Would you like to go ahead and give a 30-second wrap up?
Yes, I would say that I think of politics as a series of conversations between people and their elected leaders. And I think that we have an exciting time now because of the districting and the democracy voucher program to have a lot more of these kinds of conversations. So I'm really excited to go door to door. I knocked on doors with my campaign team, over 5,000 of them in our community. And what I keep hearing over and over again is how there's no more time. I'm leaving you on a cliffhanger.
Go ahead.
Well, I think that like the example I gave about the mom and her child living right across the street from some folks who thought they didn't support ADUs, right? Like when we have kinds of conversations around issues that are pretty polarizing and we humanize it, I think it changes the nature of the conversation. And that's what Seattle needs right now.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.